Welcome to Let's Draw Hares with me, Bethany Y Milam, and today we're going to be using ink just for a change. So you've got a choice first of all of what you want to use. So the first thing is you could be using drawing pens. So these are waterproof drawing pens. These are by Unipen. There are others, so you might prefer Pigma Micron or Faber-Castell. The important thing that is waterproof. Now these ones are definitely waterproof. The they say they're waterproof, these Faber-Castell, but I found that some of them do smudge a bit. So if you're using the same color, it doesn't really matter. But there we go. The other choice, apart from the drawing pens, and let me introduce you to this pen. Mild liner. It's like a highlighter, but it's grey. I quite like that as well. So apart from those, you could be using a dip pen. So the old-fashioned dip it in a pot of ink, a bit like a quill, and you can use that with various types of drawing ink or Indian ink. And if you're using those, then it might be a good idea to water a little bit down so you've got a mid-tone so you can do a wash and all of that fun business as well. You can also use an improvised pen. So this is a little piece of reed that's hollow, and I've turned it into my own reed pen, and that works rather nicely as well. So those are the main options, and then there's also the option of using a wash with it. So again, this could be the watered down ink. So I've put some into a little pot with some water. So I've got some grey colours. If you don't have the ink, you can use watercolour instead and use that as your wash. And any brushes at all are fine to use with that. But I have gone for the Chinese style because they do hold a lot of ink really well. So though that's your sort of beginning options for materials. If you've got any questions, shout them out. Okay. The other thing is, if pen is a bit scary, ink is a bit scary because you can't rub it out. But if you've got a white pen, so this is a white jelly roll pen, then you can use that. And you know what? Good old Tipex. Oh, dearie me. If there is a disaster, then I won't tell if you don't. Okay. The other thing is that if you want to lighten something, if it's very dark, a bit of white chalk over the top can also be used to add a bit more tonal variation back in if needed. Okay, so lots of options, lots of fun. And the first thing to just have a little think about is what kind of pen techniques you might want to be using. So I've also at the top here, I've put in a few different sizes of pens. So these are some of the Unipen pens. I've got a 01, a 02, and a 05. You can see they get progressively bigger lines as you go up. I've also got the lovely brush pen, which you can get a lovely fine line with and a very big line with, and a varying line depending on how you tilt it about. This is the Faber-Castell one. That's a fine. They don't do the numbers, they just do letters. And then This is the Micron 01. That's in a brown actually, so that's a bit interesting. You've got browns and grays in your pens, or even, I don't know, pink, blue. Well, go with it. That's fine. So the first thing is, what kind of line are you using? When you draw, all of your lines are very much the same, then it's going to be a little bit of a boring drawing. And so think about varying the line. So if you tilt some of these pens, you can get a finer, slightly scratchy line. You can also think about lifting up occasionally, so you get a hit and miss or broken line. And sometimes that is a little bit more interesting to look at. You can also think about varying how thick the line is, depending on where the light or the shadow is on your subject. So I've just got a very simple sphere here, and I've darkened or thickened the line rather at the base of it, and I've got a very thin line at the top, so it feels like it's got a bit of shadow, a bit of weight, but there's nothing apart from one single line. So you can think about varying how thick a line you're creating in different areas, and that can be just by going over with one single pen to darken or thicken a line, or it can be varying the size of the nib that you're using. So the basic techniques when you're using ink are hatching, and hatching is basically when you're putting parallel lines down on your page next to each other to create an area of tone. The closer together those lines are, the darker it's going to look. The more spaced apart they are, the lighter it's going to look. You can then cross hatch, which is when you're layering another layer of lines over the top of the first layer at a different angle. And again, the more acute the angle is, the more interesting it's going to look. So I've got two examples here, and of course this one feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more interesting than this one over here. Another sort of technique that is quite common is to use stippling or dots. And this is very, very time consuming. So I wouldn't recommend it for your quick drawings, but it could be used for adding a little bit of tone. And again, the closer the dots are together, the darker it's going to look. The more spaced apart they are, the lighter it's going to look. If you do dots with a very fine pen, you'll also get a very fine, smooth texture overall. And if you use a very thick pen, you'll get a more coarse looking texture. So that's something to bear in mind as well. So the technique we'll probably use most of all for drawing our hares is these little dashes. So I call them feathering marks, but they're very much sort of dash marks, small lines. And if you can do a little bit of a flick up at the end, it's going to make the line slightly thinner at the tip of the line than where you started off, especially, as you can see, with the brush pen. So you can really play with getting this thick to thin line. And again, that can be done at different angles, different lengths of line, layered over the top of each other. And you can combine lots of different kinds of dashes and dots and mark making together. What we'll be doing with those lines is adding some kind of wash. So here I've just tested some grey on my paper to see how dark it's looking. This is not the paper I'm going to be doing the washes on. So you need to have a paper that's going to cope with some wash, some wet media a little bit better than ordinary printer paper, which is what this is. If you've only got the ordinary printer paper, and sometimes that's what I've got to hand, this is where this pen comes in, the mild liner. And that can be used almost like a wash to fill in a larger area of light tone as well. Right, so there we are, looking at our materials, our techniques to start us off. And we're going to have a go at a warm-up. So I'm just going to grab a bit of paper to do a nice quick warm-up on. And what I'm going to suggest for this, if you happen to have a grey pen, then use that. If you happen to have a thinner nib size, you could use that as well. And then what we're going to do is switch halfway to using a much thicker pen or a black pen over the top. So I'm going to start off with a bit of scribble. It's the old scribble drawing warm-up. And what I'm going to do on top of my scribble is to look for some big shapes. So I'm looking at this hare and thinking, what is the biggest shape I am seeing? And pretty much I'm going to do an egg. It's almost Easter. There we go, Easter egg hare. It's actually a bit more like a kidney bean, isn't it? Never mind. We're looking at that shape. And then I'm going to work into that and think, okay, what's the next biggest shape I can see? And it doesn't matter if I do a wrong line, because this is my initial light colored pen, or if you're using thin pen, it's going to be your thinner nib size. And what will happen is everything that you do now, if it's a wrong line, it will just disappear into background later on. So I'm going to think, okay, where is that head? And maybe I need a bit more neck. What kind of shape is it? So I'm starting off with an oval, and then I'm cutting into it with some straighter lines and going, okay, what angle am I actually seeing in here? Where's that ear going? So just find your way around the drawing. Go back over things. See what is making sense, what might need moving about. Just check the size of the neck. You don't want that looking too skinny. And go into some details if you want. I'm looking at this little negative shape between the two legs, making sure I've got that triangle in there. And once you've drawn with your lighter pen, this is where you can come over the top with the darker pen and actually decide where the correct lines are. So you're using that framework, and then you're being selective over the top. If you want to play with putting in a bit of texture at the same time, go for it. It's not necessary for the warm-up, but if you want to put in some texture as you go along, if you can see it, draw it. Play with how thick or thin you're going to put in your dark line, maybe. And that's easier with this brush pen than if you've just got one of those single nib sizes. I do like the brush pen. It's good fun. But you've got to be bold. There we go. So, how was that for a warm-up? Ah. Now have a look. How did you do? What mistakes maybe have you made? I can see what I've done now sitting back from it. I've made that hair sit up too straight. Have you done that? Have you done something else? Okay. Take a note of what you've done. Any problems that you found with that? And we're going to have a look at the anatomy next. So having a look at those shapes and seeing what we need to have a look for before we carry on with the ball drawings. So I have two postures of my hares, or more sitting and standing on all four legs. Have a look, first of all, at the skeleton and the structure of the bones and the joints in there. What's the first thing you notice? To me, I'm looking at the spine. So from the head, we've got this very pronounced bend in the neck before we come up hunched back and down to the tail. Now, rabbits are not rodents, but that is quite similar to a rodent posture. So have a look at that bend in the neck and then the more sort of hunched position of the back. Now, even when the rabbit is standing up, the hare is standing up, we've still got this bend in the neck and we've still got a slightly hunched, curved over back position. So that's going to be quite characteristic of what we are seeing in the shape. Have a look next at the positioning of the pelvis. So we've got a very sort of sloped backwards pelvis shape. And into that, we've then got these enormous back legs. But we've got very small femur. So from the hip joint to the knee is quite small. We've then got a larger area for tibia and fibia. So this is sort of the lower leg. And then this is the heel bone. This is the calcaneus sticking out here. So all of this is foot. Whoa. It's got a lot of foot. So there are some joints in here. We first of all have the heel bone. We've got the metatarsals and we've got the phalanges. So these can bend. If you have a look here, we've got a joint, a bend here between the metatarsus and the phalanges. So it's basically standing on its toes at this point. And this is where it's got the whole foot on the ground. Front legs, we have our scapular bone on the side rather than on the back. We then have the shoulder joint facing forwards. So if you've drawn dogs, cats, something like that, it's very much similar in that you've got scapula on the side, you've got shoulder facing forwards, the elbow joint is facing backwards, and it's very much hidden in the body of the hare. So have a look on both. You're not going to see much elbow sticking out because it's above the tummy. And then We have radius and ulna in here. We've got the carpus or the wrist joint here. And then again, we've got metacarpus and phalanges. So the front foot is mostly walking on the fingers. I don't think it's going to be putting its wrist on the ground at all unless it's lying down. So it's very much fingers on the floor. So the wrist is up all the way up here. If we have a look at those feet a little bit more closely, I had fun with drawing this. Ah. So this is the forefoot and this is the hind foot. Have a count of the toes. This was interesting to me. I almost went down a rabbit hole of research, but resisted. Unintended. So here we have. This is the carpus, so this is your wrist. These are the metacarpus and these are the phalanges. I've drawn a blue line across where the jointed areas would be, pretty much. Have a look at how many toes we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the front. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the back. That's quite common, actually. So thinking of quite a few mammals, how many fingers or toes, digits do they have front to back feet? This, if you notice, number 1 digit is very, very small. And you're not likely to see it in a paw print because it's quite high up. You can't just about see it on the slide. On the back foot, so it's on the inside like the thumb, so it's on the inside here like our thumb, and it's way up. So if the hare's walking on its fingers, that doesn't touch the floor. So think of it like a dew claw in a dog. It's up nearer to the wrist joint than the others that it's actually walking on. But there is a little furry digit hiding in there. Right. Oh, and it doesn't have a pad. You know, like a dew claw on a dog, it has sort of the pad. Not on a hare. It's just fluffy around that extra digit. Okay, so let's have a little go at drawing our second hair of the evening and have a little think about the anatomy that we're seeing in here. So first of all, if you want to start off with pencil, if you feel safer with that, I'll let you. But I'm going to challenge myself to go in straight away with pen here. So I'm looking at the body shape. Well, let's see where that chest is sticking out. The back of the head is reasonably straight. Most postures, but this one's got a little bit of an angle on it. We want to put a little bit of head on here. And I think I'm going to need to move that in. Okay, first mistake. It's just adjusting. I'm going to look at these legs. So this chest seems to be sticking out quite a bit. And remember, this is where we've got the shoulder sticking forwards. And then we've got elbow sticking back. I can just about see where that is under the fur. Notice how much chest you've got in front of the leg. Are you leaving enough space there? If you look closely, you can see on the front leg there's a little bump sticking out. That would be where the wrist joint is. I'm going to look at the amount of negative space between the front leg to the back leg. And drawing a line about there. So coming up, let's give a hint of where the knee is. And then get the other side of that leg in. How close are the toes from the back leg to the paw of the front leg? On the back, just going to cut in a few little angles. And then also notice the eye. It's on the side of the head, facing to the side, not rather than facing forwards. Okay, so if I draw over the top, I should be able to see where the anatomy structures underneath are. So can you see there's a, I can't quite draw it, but there's a slightly raised area here. This is where the scapula is pushing upwards. And this is the wrist joint. And then the chain, the other little joints from metacarpals to phalanges. In the back here, and let's have a look at this one. So we've got the pelvis. We're coming to the knee, which is a little bit more obvious on this picture, sticking forwards. And then coming down, this is where our heel is. And then this is where there would be a joint that if it wanted to raise up on to the toes, we'd see a bend in here. How are we doing? Okay, so let's have a closer look at the head next. So things to look for. As I said, the eye is on the side of the head rather than on the front. The ears, it's very tempting to make them almost too long, do a caricature. If you make them too short, you'll end up with a rabbit rather than a hare as well. So, if you measure the height of the ear and then measure the length of the head from nose to base of ear, that's pretty much the same. So that gives you a good measuring point. If we look at the head from straight on, you can see the same thing. So I've in the blue line, it's very pale. I've down the side put some lines so you can see the ears, tip of ear to top of head is so long, and then top of head to chin is also so long. So you can see it's quite close in measurement. So that's something that you can just check quite easily. From the front view, you can see how much to the side those eyes are. So you've got a lot of forehead and leading down to the bridge of the nose. A lot of distance between those eyes. If you are looking at a straight on view or a 3/4 view, then you may want to draw a line from the top of the eye going across, slightly curvy, to the other side. This is going to be useful when we do 3/4 views and one of the eyes is not so visible as the other eye, because you've got to do a little bit of guesswork where that eye is. And there's quite often a bump over the top of the eye, like a little eyebrow. And you can also do bottom of the eye, make sure that lines up so you get the eyes the same size. A little thing to notice is the nose, and depending on if your hare is breathing in quite deeply, will depend on what kind of nose position you're going to see. So the nose can close up so that it looks like a very, very thin slit or a slightly darker line. Or it can be opened up so you can see more nostril, and that is where it's going to look more like a kind of squashed cat's nose almost, in that it's going to be a triangle more so. So on the screen we've got a hare that is taking quite a deep breath. Its nose is quite open, so we're getting a much larger shape. So have a little look also at how square or oval the head looks. If you want to divide this into two sort of sections, you can do a line for the top of the head and then a slightly angled line down towards the nose. From that, the front of the face, so from nose down to chin, is actually quite wide. If you make it too pointy, you're going to end up with something that looks too much like a rodent. So have a look at the angle here, but also have a look at how wide this is and how wide you're getting from top of head to sort of cheek, or where the line of the neck is, in this case, folded in a bit. Back at this sort of section of the head, so back further. There should be a bit of difference, but it shouldn't be as exaggerated as you might find in something like a rat. So bit slightly rectangular, I would say.
It can look like a deer.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I was thinking as I was drawing this anatomy page, I'm reminded of a deer or a horse or something like that. I think it's because of the eyes being on the side, as well as the sort of the head being reasonably long. Okay, so let's have a go at some more drawings. There we go. So we've got another sitting position. So I'm going to go in with this blue pencil this time, just to get a bit of angle on to the front. I'm also going to do a circle where I want the chest to be sitting in the back. Got stomach in here, and then I'm going to have the hind legs and the pelvis and all of that in this circle down here. So I'm just looking, is that going to work? Is that the shape I'm seeing? Maybe I need to go a little bit bigger here. And I'm just creating a bit of a hind leg shape. We're actually seeing both hind legs. It almost looks like it's just one giant leg, but there's two there. Have a look at where the front legs are. How much space? How much chest in front? Is that negative shape looking correct? Have a look from the chest upwards to the neck, and the head has that sitting over the top. How does the nose or the front of the face line up with the chest underneath? So I'm seeing the nose is actually sticking out in front more, so it's probably going to line up, be out about here. Going to bring the back up a little bit further. And then remember what I said about the lining up of the eyes on both sides. You can see there is a little bump of eyebrow where the eye would be sitting underneath on the far side. So I'm going to look at where that is and line up the bump of the eyebrow that I'm seeing on this side so that the highest point is in line.
So mine looks like a whippet now.
Ah. What part of it is looking like a whippet? Are the legs a bit too long? Have you made it too thin? Have a look at the stomach. Has it got enough stomach? Think about the neck. Is that thick enough? Thin enough? Or could it be that the head is a little bit too long? Yeah, and they're both built for speed, so there's going to be some similarities. Right, to get these ears in again, remember we want something about the length of a head. I'm going to have a look at that. The ears are appearing to be different lengths, the front to back, because of the positioning. And what I'm seeing is actually the front one seems to be that head length. The back one does appear to go a bit higher up from this angle. And the shape of the ears, I try to draw angles and straight lines a little bit to start off with. If they get too curvy, I just draw a circle in there. I find that it does look a little bit odd and might go a bit too wide. So just look out for that. And you find really strange shapes sometimes with the further ear in particular. Okay, so again, once you've got so far, you can then decide to come in with some ink over the top. And this is where I would play with a bit of mark making and think about the direction of the fur. So there's going to be a change of direction and also a bit of a change of fur type as we come from the back of the head to the shoulders and down the back. Might be a little bit smoother in some places. We've got that fluffy tail. A little black marking on it. Then underneath the tummy, see whether you can get that looking nice and fluffy. Change in direction a little bit in there. going to put a little bit of hatching into maybe some of the darker areas. Fluffiness in the chest. Over the nose, you quite often see a slight bump or change of direction from where the skull would be ending to where there's cartilage. Make sure that the tear duct or point of the eye is pointing towards the nose. And when you do come to the ears, you might want to put in that very characteristic hair, black tip to the ear. So we've got the inside of the ear. There's a fluffy light edge on the inside. And then the ridge, the outside, we can do a slightly curved line until it flattens out a little bit more nearer the tip. Yeah, and this one's facing away from us, so we're not seeing the inside of the ear, but we are seeing a little bit of tonal difference. So this is also where a little bit of hatching or wash could be put in. And any extra quick little bits of tone if you want to indicate anything else that you're seeing. Quick little bit of hatching or feathering. Give it a little bit more shape, a little bit more 3D. Okay, ready for the next one. Slightly different view. Okay, so I'm going to again just do a few little shapes to start me off. Think about where I'm going to have legs coming to. Maybe have a little look at that negative shape. Look at where that heel is off the ground. Interesting. So I'm drawing the shapes between the legs in order to draw the position of the legs. Ooh, that's a bit tricky to get your head around, isn't it? So I'm looking at, there's a little shape in between these legs. If I look at drawing that thin little shape, then I can think about how much leg have I got on this side? How thin is it? How thick is it? How much leg have I got on this side? How much of a shape have I got in between that front leg and the back leg? And how much shape have I got between that back leg and the tail and the other back leg? Okay, so let's put some ink over this. And again, have a little think about what kind of line, what kind of mark are you using when you're applying the ink? So if it's a furry area, are you showing the fur? If it's shorter fur, how do you change your mark? If you want to put more light or more shadow onto an area, how are you going to change the kind of line that you're using? I'm also thinking, how do I make this leg look like it's behind? So if I continue the fluffiness of the stomach across the top of that, maybe give myself a little bit of a gap before I start that leg as well, or just make it paler. That will set it behind a little bit more. Look at those long back toes. It almost doesn't look real. Amazing, amazing Back legs.
Looks like a cartoon.
Yeah. I'm also getting kangaroo vibes. Can you see that? Hmm. And of course, I don't think we really get that many opportunities to see a hare in huge amounts of detail. Probably the most common view, well, I've ever got, is the back end disappearing from me at a great rate of knots. You can kind of see um, some of the tendons in this back leg as well. Can you see where there's light and dark, where the muscle structure underneath is showing. Have a look at this shoulder. Scapular bone is really pronounced. And then there seems to be a little dip where we go up the back of the head. I always think hares look constantly startled. That big eye. And the eye is even more pronounced because there is a line of lighter fur around it, and that comes out and sort of goes towards the nose as well. Okay, so on this one, if you want to also add a little bit of a wash, then um, what I would suggest is use a very watered down ink or watercolor to start off with. And then you can always layer up a little bit more over the top of it. And what I'm going to try and do is leave where we've got that light hitting the front and the underside slightly of the hair. I'm going to try and leave that as white paper. So when you're putting in your wash, you can be thinking about, as well as just putting in a area of tone, thinking about putting in some mark making and some textures if you want to as well. So on top of that light wash, if you want to darken any areas, you can always come in with a slightly darker gray. If you want to use color, you can as well. I'm going to stick to my different grays. One good thing about ink is if you put it on and it looks a bit too dark or the line was too hard, you can, while it is still wet on the page, just take a wet brush and lift out or soften it in slightly. So it's similar in watercolor that way. The difference is that once it has dried, it's there forever. Whereas watercolor, you can still continue to lift up a little bit more. Okay, so I'm not going to fill it all in. I'm not being really exact with this. There's a little bit of a slightly abstract pattern, but it's just showing some areas that are slightly darker, some areas that are a little bit lighter. So let's have a look what we got next. Slightly more straight on view. If you're feeling brave, at some point you might want to start doing a wash first and then line over the top. Going to introduce the idea slowly. And you can just go for the line. So have a look at this head at this angle. What are we seeing? It's a funny old shape. Drawing it and going, doesn't look right. It is. Okay. So, top of head. Think about where the central line is coming down, sort of at 3/4 view. Actually, I'm just going to carry that all the way down. here. And then we've got this side of the top of the head. It continues to stick out. And then we've got an eye protruding out here. We're then coming in. There's a bit of fluff, so it's a bit disguised, but we're coming in slightly before we get to what I'm going to call the muzzle area, the front of the face. And so the nose is going to come in here. And the mouth is going to come in somewhere around here on that central line. And then come up the other side from the nose, come out a bit more at an angle. It's going to sit over here. I'm then going to do my little visor across. So if this top of this eye is there, the bottom of this eye is there, I'm going to have to make this eye the same size at the same angle. Have I put too much of an angle on that? I think I have. So again, I'm looking eyebrow shape over the top, and underneath we're going to then have this cheek sticking out a little bit. Underneath there's a bit of neck sticking out a bit as well. I just tidy that up a bit. So we've got this almost triangle on the flat front part of the head. Got the eyebrows sitting over here, and this is where you've got this little bump sticking out. The top of the head comes up slightly triangular as well. The eyes sitting on the side, so you're seeing a little sliver on this side and a little bit more eye, but not a full circle on this side. Underneath you've got cheek protruding out a little bit, neck underneath that, and that's going to go into shoulder and back. Ears are coming up here. I think because I've drawn the head quite large, I'm not going to be able to fit in the whole of the legs. I'm just going to focus in on that head. So let's put some ink over it, show those lines even more. So you can see we've got a funny old shape here. We've got roundedness on the outside, but then the shape is a little bit elliptical. Sometimes it can even look a little bit cut off at the front. Put it in quite a dark line around the eye, coming down to that sort of point of tear duct as well. Let's put some eyelashes in. On this side, we've got a very thin ellipse. Have a look at the shape of the nose. So on the side we can see more of. It's almost like a little triangle. And then another little shape for the rest of the nose. Have a look at how the ear almost seems to come in behind the eye. And when you put in the pupil into these 3/4 view eyes, remember that is also going to be elliptical. And on this side, it appears to be sort of half hidden. It's not on the edge. So leave a light bit on the edge, the outside edge of the eye. And the dark pupil is on the inside part. Might make you go, what? But that's what we're seeing. Okay, so let's just put a little bit indication inside the ear again. Fluffy on the inside part of the ear. It's still fluffy, but a little bit less fluffy on the outside part, and that's where it seems to flatten out a bit more before we get to the top. Okay, so a little challenge for you now that we've had a few practices. Have a little look at some movement. Not very much movement to start off with. So if you want to draw from this, you can do. If because we're running out of time, you want to save the the movement studies for the next one, you can do. But have a little look at the shapes that you're seeing as the hair moves into different positions. Okay, let's talk about movement. So, sometimes when a hare is running, all 4 feet are off the ground, and here's the proof. So, what we're going to look at next is a few quick photographs of hares in motion. And what I'm going to challenge you to do is maybe draw a little bit smaller, maybe, and have a go at looking at, first of all, the back position. So it's not going to be a case of drawing the hare in great detail, sorry, but looking for the shape and getting a sense of where the legs are, even if we're not drawing them in too much detail. And you might want to, if you're getting confused with the amount of legs going all which ways, you might want to just concentrate on the front and back leg that are closest to us to start off with. It's interesting to look at the negative shape in between. So maybe think about this shape in here. There might be other negative shapes that start to pop out at you as well. So you might go, oh, there's another negative shape there. And though it's slightly more open, there is another negative shape back here. And when I want to get a sense of motion, my lines get quicker and more scribbly, loose, but maybe interesting. Hopefully interesting. Ooh, and with pen, it does encourage you to just go with it. So let's do some super quick movements. Or too quick for you. Have a look what's going on now. We've got the back. As I said, if it's too complicated, too fast, just focus on those front facing hind and front legs rather than all four. So when I'm trying to get a sense of motion, I might not even draw everything that I'm seeing, or I might simplify some of that. So things like leaving only a single line to indicate an ear, that's fine. Don't need to draw a paw on this one. If it's moving too quickly, it will probably be a motion blur, so we can leave it off. So let's see if we can start doing some really, really quick sketches like that from the next slide as well. How few remarks can you make? Here's your challenge. Pick a hair. I'm going to go for this stretched out view. So I'm looking at the back legs at that sort of thigh shape. What's the angle? Where's that going? I'm looking at the lights and darks, and I might not always be drawing them, but they are a helpful indication of what's going on underneath. So could be that we're doing a quick little swivel like that, or just doing an indication of a bit of skin between these two areas. Funny how upright the ears are in these pictures. You'd think they would streamline and lay them flat more. Okay, how are you doing? You got one? Good. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Pick a hair. Which position do you like the look of? I think I'm going to go for the top one. It's sort of taking off. On this one, I can see both the scapulas, shoulder bones sticking up. That's quite interesting to see if you can hint at. Oops. Offspring. Okay, so next we have another little video. And again, if it's too challenging to draw from, just watch and notice the body shape. So how does the line across the back change? Maybe have a look at one leg and the different positions you find it in. So you might notice in the drawings that you've already made how we've got this sort of more slightly hunched back with the back end going up. And then as the front legs reach forward, the back stretches out much straighter. Okay, let's have a go at this picture next. And here I'm going to challenge you to do the wash first. Dun dun dun. This is going to be fun. So what you want to do is to think about where are, first of all, light tones first. So go for a watery wash that you can then work over top of and darken. And what I'm going to do is look for the big shape. Let's bring up here. So go along the line of the back. Think about the change of angle, the head, back. And it doesn't have to be a completely filled in shape. If you want to leave some white paper, you can do. It's entirely up to you. And you've always got room to go darker over the top as well. So if you end up putting a bit too much wash over any area, don't panic. You can work your way over the top. And like with the scribble drawing that we started off with for our warm-up, any extra really light shapes can become part of the background. And you can always add an extra wash for background at a later stage as well. So it's a little bit messy. A little bit sort of just finding your way around the shape to start off with. Once you're happy with the lightest areas of wash, you can then come in and put a slightly darker wash over. And again, it doesn't have to be everywhere, pick and choose. And if you want to start putting in some more sort of linear brush strokes as well as shapes, That is absolutely fine. Okay, so if you are using ordinary drawing pens, you might need to wait for that to be completely dry before you work over anymore. If you are using a dip pen, you can go in at this stage, but be aware if you go over a very wet area, you will get a bleed out into that wet area, which can be a good thing, or it can be a not so good thing. And again, here I can pick and choose how much do I want to put in, how much is going to be implied. Don't need to stick within the shapes that I've made either. So if I want to change where the outline is, I can do. I'm just having fun with this. I think sometimes with these loose style drawings, the less lines, the better. I'm very tempted to leave that paw just as a funny squiggle rather than putting an outline around it. Same with this back leg that's sort of very pale at the moment. So what I might do there is just slightly darken that. That's a bit too dark to go in here. You can just slightly darken this shape too. I quite like that. Let's go a bit darker on this ball. There we go. And I love the mud. Funny thing to love, isn't it? But that trail of mud is really fun in this picture. So I'm going to see whether I can carefully, whoop, it's going to go everywhere. Get a few blobs. I need to position a few as well. Oh, that gives it a bit of movement, doesn't it? Let's see if we can do some few little scratchy lines as well. Ow. Now he's moving. So I find that if you want to get an animal to look like it's moving, seeing how it interacts with the background, so running through water or mud or dust, see how that gets kicked up. And that will help to get that sense of movement, along with getting that anatomy correct for the running motion or jumping in this case. Okay, so we now have a series of photographs of a chase, and we're going to end with a picture of two hares boxing. So think of this as the lead up to the boxing match, except they were kind of interrupted by the photographer. You will see at some point exactly where they notice that they are running towards a person with a camera. So you may want to choose one hare from the slides to draw. Find a position that looks interesting. What pose do you like? So I think I'm going to go for on the top right, Mr. Hare. And the leg is a bit of a funny angle on this one. And I've gone for using my midliner, the very light grey pen. So it's a pen where I can put in almost like a wash. I can do shapes and I can do lines as well. And it's also quite light, so if I want to change where any of these lines are going, I have the option of doing that. And also if I want to put in some lines that aren't actually there but are showing me a little bit more of the anatomy. So I put a central line down the head. Hasn't got a central line down his head, but it's helpful. So I'm going to have that. So again, once I have a few sort of guidelines, I can come back over the top with a dark pen and pick out some of the lines that I want to show up more. And I'm going to say thank you to the photographer at this point. So Jon Laysell took these wonderful photos and has kindly allowed me to use them for this workshop. Even at this point, going over with the dark pen, I can move things. So if I'm seeing actually this near had it in slightly the wrong position to start off with, I can, when I come over with the dark pen, just move that over to where it should be. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. Can pick a hare. Which position do you want to draw? What's interesting? This is where you can see that the female hare in front does notice the photographer and just about to change direction on that lower photo. I might draw her. Quite an interesting body position again, where we've got the hind quarters way up in the air. And her legs on the ground in front. Again, look for those simple shapes. Start you off. As you work into some of the anatomy that we've covered, think about, as you can see here, I'm not drawing the kind of visor I've suggested across from one eye to the other, but I'm invisibly tracing along the top and the bottom of that far eye I've already drawn in, and doing a few little dots to place in the nearest eye to start off with. See whether that looks in the right position, and before I fill it in more. Okay, one more. Again, choose which position you want to have a go at drawing. I think I'm going to stick to the lower slide and have another go at the female in front. So here I'm just going to give a hint of the line of the stomach where you got the paler fur underneath. Try and get the idea that we're seeing more of the underneath of the hair in this position. Also have a look at the head, how it's foreshortened because it's turned away from us. But this line across the back, and again, it just gives a hint that we're seeing a different angle. Then I'm going to put a little loop on the back of the heel. So we're seeing the dark underside of that part of the foot. There we go. I think there's one more, but we will leave we will leave that view. And we're kind of running out of time, but we have one more picture to have a go at. Now, this is where you can choose. Do you want to have a go at putting on the wash first or the line first? Which one are you going to go for? So I think I'm going to play it safe and actually put a few guidelines down first. So again, I'm just looking for shapes, negative shapes, thinking about the length, the width of those shapes. And as I'm drawing, I'm thinking also about some of the anatomy. So where am I seeing the position of those legs? Does it make sense? I know it's not quite impacting, but my mind sort of cycles between, do I want to have a pow kind of mark or a boop on here? But yeah, let's not make it too comic book like. So how have you found drawing a little bit more of a tricky scene? Again, it's a case of break it down into the simplest shapes. Don't worry about getting the details in too quickly. Okay, and once you've got so far, then you can decide what you want to go in with first. I'm going to do some line with my brush pen and use that to get a few different kinds of lines. So I'm going to use broken line and I'm going to play with a little bit of feathering or maybe even filling in some of the very dark sections. And again, just using the line in a few different ways. So using sort of sweeping lines, using a broken line, it will help to give your drawing more sense of movement. So you'll end up with a more dynamic image. But even at this point, you can move things. So where I initially put a bit of a circle for where I was going to put the eye, I've moved it higher in the head. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can take out some of that blue before I put the wash on. And again, start with a light wash and then build it up, dark out where you want it to go. And you don't have to fill everything in. You can pick and choose and work your way around. Don't even need to stay in the lines. Out the lines. It's fine. Sometimes it can be even more dramatic if you actually purposefully go outside your lines. It's tricky to do. We're trained to stay in the lines, aren't we? But go for it. See what happens. Again, once you've got the lighter wash on, then you can decide where do you want to darken up. And even though dark lines don't need to stay in those lines. Again, just play. Ooh, that's a good spatter. Play with a little bit of spatter if you want to. Don't mind getting a bit messy. If that adds a bit more drama to the image, go for it. So I'm going to go straight in with the pen, drag that through the wet ink. And again, if there was any areas in the hairs that you wanted to put a little bit more line into, you can go back in and think about that, but just maybe a few scribbly bits for some texture. I don't want to do too much. I'm being a bit hesitant. Okay. I think that is just about it. So, sorry to run over a little bit, but hopefully you're enjoying it. I was enjoying myself. So Thank you for watching. Hope you have learned a little bit about hairs, a little bit about pen and ink techniques, and had some good fun doing some loose style drawings at the end there. Thank you for watching and see you again for another workshop soon. Bye bye.